Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to discuss July in your garden. Let's get going. Well, July can be a challenging month in the garden. There is no doubt about it. Here in Arkansas, Zone 7B, it's already been triple digits for a few times, and that's real heat, not heat index. So today we're just going to discuss a few things that we need to make sure that we pay attention to in our gardens, especially in our raised bed gardens, to make sure that we have a successful July in the garden. The very first thing I want to talk about, and I've started talking about this way back in May, so anybody who keeps up with the channel, this isn't a surprise, but this is the month that we've been preparing our watering for. If you haven't, I'll put a little link up here to go back to next month, but we've been talking about making sure that you use your irrigation systems, make sure that all your hoses are good, that you have everything that you need. Now, the reason it's so important right now in July is, at least in our zone, we've been 3 weeks without any rain, and the average heat index has been over triple digits. So we're watering every 2 days, and it's incredibly important that you make sure that your plants get the water they need. If we don't get the water for our plants, right, that makes them a whole lot more susceptible to disease. The impact of an infestation is going to be dramatically worse if they don't have the water that they need, and they're going to have difficulty putting off fruits and vegetables. So essentially, you're not going to get much from your garden if you don't try to water. Now, I know that right now it can be a challenge for most of us. The weather is getting a bit extreme in a lot of places, lack of water, a whole lot of heat. But just remember, if you go out and you start watering before the sun gets up in the morning, it's going to help you out a lot. So part of what I would like to address during this watering part of it is also making sure that you take care of yourself and you hydrate yourself as well. It doesn't do us any good to take care of the plants if we don't take care of ourselves, right? So one of the tricks, and the reason I'm here with my cucumber plants for this part of the video is, yes, cucumbers, they need a lot of water to grow correctly. There's no doubt about that. But one thing to keep in mind is that if you're getting dehydrated, if you're starting to get cramps, you find yourself sweating a lot, any of those type of things, just take one cucumber, put it in a large glass of water with some ice, let it sit for about 5-10 minutes to get nice and cold, and let some of those electrolytes from your cucumber come out into the water. Slam that glass of water, and I can assure you, you will not have any issues with hydration. If only it was that simple for our plants, right? So just a few things to make sure while we're watering. I would make sure that you're getting at least an inch of the depth of your soil completely wet. Now, not just damp, I'm talking about soaked for at least an inch down. And what'll happen is that'll make sure as the day goes on that water continues to seep down into your roots, and it's going to prevent a lot of issues that you have. It will also ensure that all of the water, whenever the temperature does get up to 100 degrees, it'll ensure that water doesn't just evaporate right off. July is also a time where the pests come out. So when I talk about pests, there's a whole array of things that we need to address when we talk about pests. So the big thing that we're fighting right now, believe it or not, are birds. Birds are trying to get everything out of our yard, and I don't know if it's because of the drought and scarcity of food and such, or they probably just like the same kind of food that we do, right? So our blackberries are the ones they're getting at right now. So I bring this up because the best way to fight pests when they're trying to eat your food is to pick it first. Now, we like to pick our blackberries whenever they are nice, juicy, and perfectly ripe. We like to freeze ours, eat them throughout the wintertime, put them in smoothies, that sort of thing. Anyway, but if you really want to keep the birds off of your blackberries, the best way to do it is to pick them just a little early, put them in a windowsill, and let them finish in ripening there. Now, when I mean just a little early, I mean just a slight bit of red. You still want most of the sugars and things to form on the vine, out in the sun, that sort of thing. But that's a perfect scenario, right? Sometimes we don't live in a world where we get perfect scenarios. So right now, with the birds coming in and eating our stuff, the best thing that we can do to make sure we get the berries first is to pick them as soon as they're ready. So moving on to the next form of pest that we're getting, we are getting bugs everywhere. Every day it seems like I'm putting out some sort of fire. And I'll probably do a video on that next week, sort of like what my toolkit looks like when I go out and what I do to handle these infestations. But the things to keep an eye out for right now, hornworms. I picked the first 3 hornworms over the last few days. I just take those off. I give them to my chickens. If you're a little skittish, you can just wear some gloves. If you don't have chickens that can take care of the hornworms, you can drop them in a bowl of water. Just put a little Dawn dishwashing liquid into it and it'll take care of all that. You can just throw them in there, and then whenever you're finished with them, chunk them out behind your barn or fence line or something along those lines, and that'll take care of your hornworms. We're also getting a whole lot of mites and things, white flies, those sorts of things. And that's almost all of that stuff that we handle with a spray bottle, neem oil, Dawn dishwashing liquid, and I've got a gallon sprayer that I use. You can put in 3 tablespoons of neem oil and 1 tablespoon of Dawn dishwashing liquid per gallon, and that's going to knock out a lot of the issues that you have. We use that. It takes care of the blight on our tomatoes. It'll take care of the leaf spot on your tomatoes. The only thing I would caution is that if you're using the neem oil and your issue with blight or leaf spot persists, then at that point I would just go to maybe use some hydrogen peroxide maybe once a week. Take a spray bottle, probably a smaller one. All you have to do is mix it 1 part hydrogen peroxide, 3 parts water, and it'll take care of that as well. It just kind of changes the pH on your leaves. I also am using a lot of DE right now because our squash, they're not putting off as much because of the extreme weather that we're currently having. We are getting squash though. We're eating 3-4 squash a week or whatever, and they're delicious. What we're hoping for is a turn in the weather so that keeping them alive sort of pays off. So anyway, but for those, we're putting the DE out on the ground. We're also spraying with the neem oil to get rid of any of the squash bugs around there. This year, I am noticing squash bugs on everything. Right now, you'll almost always get them on your cucumbers and that sort of stuff or whatever, but I've gotten them off my tomatoes, out of my beans. Almost every kind of vegetable that we're growing, we have squash bugs. I say that because keep an eye out for the eggs. If you can get them when the eggs, that's going to save you so much time and frustration down the line. Not only that, but it's going to prevent you from spending more time out in the heat trying to care for your plants. Your plants will also have a much better chance of producing during the July heat and droughts that we're having. So the last thing I want to say about pests, right, is it is early July, and we just did a video for 5 vegetables that you can grow. I'll put a link up here. But the reason it's important to kind of point out it's early July is because, you can still do that cost benefit analysis, right? You can still say, man, is it just worth it for me to pull this out and start over? Some things that you can do that with, you can do tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, your squash, you can do that with. You can do it with kale, you can do it with beans. Now, things like your tomatoes and things, you're not going to get tomatoes off of a plant right away, but it is hot enough to where if you start a tomato now, by the end of the year, you're going to get, a good round of tomatoes, say by the end of August, early September. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind, to not get discouraged, that if you have something that you run into that maybe you can't overcome, or it's an infestation you're afraid if you don't remove the plant might spread to the rest of your garden, just take that bad boy out and start over. Not only that, it gives you practice for starting everything, but it's going to give you peace of mind in the garden. Because right now, again, it's super challenging, but rest assured, it's challenging for all of us. The next thing to ensure you take care of in your garden during the month of July is trim your plants. Now, it's the biggest thing that I have to do all week. I mean, I spend way more time going through and trimming my plants than I do anything else in the garden. Now, the reason is a few-fold, I suppose, because I've mentioned this before, but I like to make sure I touch every plant every day. What happens, the reason I say that is because it allows me, to get it while it's small, right? To fix the problem before it gets out of control. So if you're able to address every plant every day, that's a great way to make sure that your garden's going to make it through July. So what I do is I go through all of my squash, I trim up, and I've shown that on the channel. I also go through all of my tomatoes. And when I trim my tomatoes, I just kind of go from the bottom and I work my way up. What I'm looking for are blight or spotted, your leaf spots, or any sort of hornworm infestation, anything along those lines. What I like to do is, if you catch it early enough on your blight or your leaf spot, any of those things, you can just take the leaf off itself. But sometimes it spreads so quickly that you have no choice but to take the branches off. Now, tomato plants are one of the most resilient plants in your garden. So do not worry if you have to take a branch off here or there. The important part is that the tops of them are still nice and green and have enough leaves to produce the chlorophyll that the plant is going to need to be successful, grow, that sort of stuff. So the idea is you can clean from the bottom up. Again, and by this point of the year, most of you probably have the limbs off the ground, right? Just because, you know, eventually blight or something's eating them, whatever. Most people have had to trim those bottom branches off. So as you go up, you'll start to see, you know, your first tomatoes will be at the bottom of them and sort of work your way up. I just take the initiative, and once I start pulling the red tomatoes off, I actually will clean all the limbs around the tomatoes that are ripening so they can have more access to the sun. And it also prevents getting a chance of anything getting on those leaves that could, you know, maybe infect or infest the tomato fruit that I've worked so hard to make sure that we could eat during this time of year. So your squash plants, your tomato plants, I don't trim my beans very often. I mean, if there's an infestation or something, I'll do that. It's important to do your melons. Also this time of year, your indeterminate variety of tomatoes, you're gonna need to start working those bad boys up the stakes, right? So we talked about this before. If it's indeterminate, you know, you can bet it's probably gonna get somewhere between 12 and 15 foot tall. So if you didn't, you can go ahead and put new stakes in and trim it up and tie it up as you go. If you take care of those indeterminate tomatoes, you'll be eating tomatoes till the first frost. A few of these I've had to take in the shade, so hopefully you all can see as well. But you know, it's 10 o'clock and it's already close to 100 degrees, so we're doing the best we can. So the next thing that I wanted to bring up is it is currently time for you to start planning your fall gardens. Now, here at the Garden Hutch, we plan ours at the first of every year. We plan all of our garden beds, spring, summer, fall, winter. So we kind of have an idea of what to do, and we take note as we go. So right now is the perfect time to start planning that if you have not, right? So you kind of have an idea of what beds are going to be coming out and when, what's producing really well. And a lot of times the weather this time of year will have a big impact on the way that you plant your fall garden. So if it's hot and you're losing a lot of plants right now and you're replanting them, they may carry you later into late into the summer, more so than they would if you just had one round of plants that didn't have all the trauma that had to be replaced. So everybody's is going to be a little bit different on this. But what we like to plant in the fall, we do, I mean, a whole array of things, right? We go through and we do our entire salad beds all over again. We do carrots and beets. We also, this year, we're going to try to do a whole thing of turnips, get a big bed of turnips going because we love turnips and turnip greens. So, but I'm kind of rambling on that point. But the important part is, take a look at your garden space that you have, maybe even your yard. And if your weather allows you to, if you've enjoyed your summer space, but you don't want to sacrifice any of that stuff for the fall, maybe now is a good time for you to take the initiative in the early mornings or after the sun goes down and maybe build yourself a couple raised beds or get an area prepped for you to grow some of those root vegetables for the during the fall into the winter for you and your family to enjoy. And the final tip that I would like to give for the month of July is to sort of look around, and we all like to see the stuff that we've done well that's worked out really well. But for me, the most important thing to think about this time of the year are the failures, the thing that I have planned out from the first of the year all the way through the spring into the summer that just simply didn't work. And we're constantly moving stuff around here on the homestead. Every year we try to add a little bit more in the garden, some more garden space. So inevitably some things are going to work, some things simply aren't. So right now is a great time. Look at what didn't work and decide, is it worth trying it somewhere else next year? And if so, make a note of that. You're going to have all fall and winter to address that. And if not, you can just simply mark it off of your vegetable list. So if you've made it to this point of the video, I would like to say thank you. We really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like. If you have not, consider subscribing to the channel. It goes a long way in helping us reach our goals, and we really appreciate it. Even better, it's free for you. So Until next time, I hope that all you folks take care of yourselves. Peace.